friends. I'm Karen, and this is the Family Food for Moms podcast. We're talking about inspiration for family cooking and dining. Today, we're going to talk more about what we can learn from World War II about food and nutrition. One of the biggest takeaways for me is realizing how resourceful people became when they had to be. They grew the victory gardens, they substituted food for other food when things were rationed or not available. They made their meals simpler. They cooked more from scratch if there wasn't availability. They learned how to adapt and edit recipes. For example, cakes without eggs, if eggs weren't available. So they were really rising to the challenge, and I admire that. Often today we have many challenges with our shopping and our cooking or time to do those things in our families. And it's amazing if we can figure out how to be adaptable, how to edit recipes when needed, how to be able to cook on a cheaper budget, how to be able to use ingredients when others aren't available, or not have to just pop to the grocery store for the smallest thing, but learn how to do without it, and to change and be adaptable in our cooking. And then also to learn how to eat simpler in ways that cost us less and cost us less time, like a simple meat with a side vegetable, and not always needing the fancy, and balancing the fancy with the simple and wholesome food. So I'm going to talk a bit about rationing and what people did if a food was rationed or it was not available. And then I'm going to talk about the kind of things that the soldiers ate and the people ate during that time. So people ate a variety of foods at that time: meat, bread, potatoes, vegetables. They also ate canned goods. And these were originally intended for soldiers and travelers. I'll just mention quickly, in World War I, soldiers ate meat like beef or mutton, potatoes, bread and jam, and they drank tea. And on the home front, they ate processed and canned foods and grains like flour substitutes that were available. Grocery stores sold processed and canned foods. Specialty stores sold meat and produce and baked goods. So then in World War II, soldiers ate mostly stews or soups, meat and spaghetti, chopped ham, eggs, potatoes, etc. And on the home front, they ate rationed foods like meats, canned fish, other processed foods, cheese. There was canned milk, and then some form of fats. There was also sugar and coffee available. And then Americans grew their own fruits and vegetables to help feed soldiers and to stretch the ration coupons. So animal lard was a common source of fat, but was soon replaced by vegetable shortening, Crisco, due to rationing. So that was a time when some bad fats came into use. Before that, it was a lot healthier. And after that, seed oils were produced. Wheat cereals were replaced by oatmeal, and sometimes sugar was replaced with honey. People turned to potato flour or cornstarch as alternatives for wheat-based baking. So rationing and shortages affected a lot of people, and there were a lot of efforts to support the soldiers at home and abroad. As I mentioned in the previous episode, the government promoted a diet to conserve resources while keeping soldiers strong and healthy and boosting morale. So what exactly was rationed? You had your ration cards, and you could only buy a certain amount of a food item each week. Meat was heavily rationed, particularly beef, pork, and lamb. So people ate smaller portions and then used less expensive meats like chicken and fish or canned meats. Butter was limited, and people started using margarine and cooking oils. Sugar was rationed. Canned goods were rationed, the vegetables, fruits, and meats. They were an easy way to store food, but as I said, they were rationed. Coffee was rationed, and people tried to stretch it using grains like barley or rye as substitutes. Common crops in victory gardens included tomatoes, potatoes, carrots, and beans, which were basic ingredients for stews and soups and sauces. Then people started to substitute with spam or other canned meats because of the scarcity of fresh meats. Eggs and dairy were sometimes replaced by powdered eggs and dried milk, which had a long shelf life. Meatloaf became popular, and roast chicken. They could stretch smaller amounts of meat further. And then things like mac and cheese or potato-based dishes were comfort foods and were made with inexpensive ingredients that were not rationed. It's fascinating learning about the soldiers' rations, what they ate and how they were planned to give maximum nutrition but still be shelf stable. There's an interesting website, the Keep Military Museum, which is said to have the last surviving D-Day ration pack. The rations are packed in a waxed cardboard box, which is sealed to keep the contents water and gas proofed. They were small in size, which allowed them to be carried in a mess tin, and they were light, but they provided the soldier with the 400 calories that he needed in a day. So this pack, they had to x-ray to see what the contents were, but still keep it intact. The contents are 10 biscuits, 2 oatmeal blocks, that would be very dense oatmeal, tea, sugar, and milk blocks, 1 meat block, 2 slabs of raisin chocolate, 1 slab of plain chocolate, some boiled sweets, 2 packs of chewing gum, a packet of salt, meat extract tablets, 4 tablets of sugar, and some toilet paper. Very interesting. The 14-man ration or compo ration came in a wooden crate, and that contained tinned and packaged food like bully beefs, spam, steak and kidney pudding, beans, cheese, jam, biscuits, soup, sausages, and margarine. So those would be for people at the bases and not on the home front. Tinned army rations after the war were still provided, but they were supplemented with packets of freeze-dried foods or products in vacuum-sealed plastic. And the soldiers were supposed to be issued different menus each day, but often ended up with the same over and over again. So as I mentioned, the 24-hour ration pack would contain enough calories to sustain the soldier in the field for one day. It would contain breakfast, a main meal, the ingredients to make a hot drink, and then a variety of snacks, including chocolate bars. So Nutella definitely deserves its own section here. The heavenly spread. Apparently, Nutella sells enough jars to cover the Great Wall of China 8 times. Not sure how thickly. So during the Napoleonic Wars, chocolate was scarce in France and other European countries. And in Britain, Napoleon forbade French allies from trading with the British. And he was trying to destroy the British economy. So the price of chocolate went way up. Then some resourceful Italian chocolatiers had the idea of adding chopped hazelnuts to their chocolate to stretch it. This was a tasty paste known as gianduai. I'm not sure how to say that. Then it faded into obscurity once cocoa imports came back in full swing. And then again, World War II, cocoa was scarce. Pietro Ferrer created a recipe using hazelnuts, sugar, and the tiny bit of cocoa that he could get his hands on. And this was a thick, sweet loaf named gianduju. If you're having trouble imagining cutting Nutella, that wasn't really a hit. So then, in 1951, after the Second World War, he came up with a spreadable version, calling it Super Crema. It was amazing. A tiny bit went a long way, and chocolate lovers loved it. In 1964, the recipe was adjusted for mass production and rebranded as Nutella. By the way, Ferrero created his company, his chocolate company, and that was the first product. So nowadays it's very popular. We even have World Nutella Day on the 5th of Feb. A couple more replacements that people used if something wasn't freely available during the war. Carob, made from legumes, the carob bean, was used as a chocolate substitute in baking or candy making. It has a sweetish flavor. Bacon drippings were also used sometimes as fats, or olive oil, which was less affected by rationing. Some people even made flour from dried potatoes. Today we can get potato flour. And then also in baking, people used mashed bananas or applesauce or gelatin if they couldn't get eggs or other items. Canned fish like sardines and salmon was used more often. Things like peanut butter and tofu were used for extra protein, as well as lentils and beans. And then less expensive cuts of meat and organ meats like liver were popular. So all those substitutes are good things that we can use as well, especially to cut down on budget. And these days there's many recipes on the internet using those substitutes if you prefer to use them instead of another ingredient. Wheat intolerance or even gluten intolerance wasn't really a thing back then because the grains, especially the wheat, was not so hybridized or messed with. So people were not allergic to it. It was less sprayed. There wasn't glyphosate in the wheat, which is usually what we're allergic to. But there was a shortage of wheat during that time. So overall, what I like to take away from this is simpler meals, being creative and innovative in figuring out how to make up for the shortages that we have or the low budget that we may have, figuring out how to get fresh food over processed food, which actually came from a lot of what they developed for the soldiers in the war, the shelf-stable foods that are now snack foods. So trying to cook fresh, simple, whole foods as much as possible is the best practice, and then to enjoy the abundance of fruits, vegetables, and meat that we have today. Thank you for listening today. I hope you have a good week.